Thank you for tuning in to another episode of G.E.N Talks podcast, where the goal is to empower the youth of Glendale and connect youth to community resources, individuals, and organizations through interviews and discussion. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Desiree. And we had the pleasure of talking to Sallie Anne Rodriguez. Sallie is a Latina writer, researcher, and former head of US Hispanic Marketing for Citibank, where she supported diversity initiatives. She studied communications at Loyola University in New Orleans and holds a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Miami. Continue listening on to our lovely conversation on how Sallie followed her dreams and became a published author. Hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Sallie, for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. We have a lot to discuss.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
To begin this interview, I want to take it back to your time at Loyola University in New Orleans, where you were studying communications and then pursued a master's in business admin from University of Miami. What about these two avenues drew you to them?
For Loyola, I knew I wanted to study communications early on. I've always loved writing and anything to do with writing, although my career initially took the avenue of marketing and advertising, which of course is very different from novel writing, but it was still writing. It was still a lot of creative writing. So this is kind of me reinventing myself as a writer, which I always had that aspiration early on. But Loyola and certainly University of Miami offered a wonderful foundation for the career path that I've gone down, which has been really interesting.
So prior to pursuing writing, you managed Hispanic and diversity marketing for Citibank and supported research, educational, and entertainment content initiatives for a digital media agency. Could you tell us a little bit more about your time there?
Sure. So I started my career in traditional advertising on the agency side. And then I got recruited and I got caught up into financial services marketing. I don't know how, but that's really kind of where my path led me. And I worked for a Latin America division of Citibank, but then I guess the coolest, really just most rewarding job that I had was working in New York headquarters. So I managed Hispanic marketing throughout the United States. So I had to travel quite a bit, but it was just really rewarding because I'm a Latina myself. So it was amazing to really launch initiatives and do a lot of community outreach, which I did at the time for for the Hispanic communities, be it in LA, New York, Chicago, Miami. So I went to a lot of the major markets and really supported grassroots initiatives. And that was the part that was really rewarding.
And going back to talking about writing, when did your love for storytelling kind of blossom? And then also your love for books, when did that kind of get introduced to you?
Well, I grew up, my mom, she literally read a book a night. She was obsessed with books. So my fun was books. I mean, it was introduced to me since birth, really. And I remember going to the mall with my mom and we always went to the bookstore. So those were my treats. What book would you like to pick? So early on, it was just she just really inspired this love for books. And she always told me ever since I was little, she passed now, but she always told me when I was little that I had so many stories to tell and that I was a writer. And she always encouraged me. And my sister always reminds me, she's like, Mom always said you were going to write a book. And I guess I did. And I actually dedicated my debut novel, Treasure Track, to her because it's 100% my mom whispering down from heaven.
What was a pivotal moment in your life that made you want to pursue your dreams?
Well, I've had quite a few dreams and I've accomplished a lot of these dreams. I really feel like I reached a pinnacle in my corporate career because I did manage a whole division, be it Hispanic marketing and also Latin America marketing, which I did down when I came back to Miami. So I really feel like I climbed that corporate ladder. But after that, I had 3 children. So I felt I needed to dial it down a little bit. And at that point, I was working for the family marketing agency. I still had Citibank as a client. And when I dialed it down a little bit more, even from that, I was like, okay, well, it's time to pursue my writing dreams. And that's really where I just gave it a shot. And it's hard. I'm not going to say it's not hard to penetrate the traditional publishing world, but I had this attitude and I wasn't going to give up. So I got it done, and it was really wonderful because my kids and my family share this journey with me. And every time they wanted to give up, I'm like, listen, mom has been rejected like dozens of times. You can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. We're gonna make it happen. So that's always been my attitude, and it's really something that I've tried to pass on to my boys and my family.
And I guess you touched a bit about this right now, but going from that corporative world and then into the author world, what was that transition like? And I guess what did you learn throughout that whole journey?
I think the hardest thing for me was because I managed the department, right? So I had a level of control. And
Mm.
now it's really kind of you're giving control to your publisher. They control the timeline, and I always control the timeline. And marketing things are done like yesterday. You're always up against very tight timelines. And publishing moves at, I was just in Costa Rica, so I'm going to use it moves at a sloth's pace. It moves very slow. So, for example, I remember after I signed my contract, it's really a year out that your book is going to launch. And then there's a lot that goes on in that process, but you don't really control those timelines. So you're just kind of looking at your inbox. Okay, ding. Okay, you've got another revision round to deal with. And so that part was a little bit frustrating to me, just kind of giving up that control. But it's wonderful because you are working with a publisher and they're an amazing experienced team. So it's wonderful to have that partner, if you will, kind of watching your back and making sure that you're putting the best product out in the world.
So your debut middle grade novel is called Tracks. Can you talk a little bit more about the inspiration behind it?
Sure. So Treasure Tracks, it's a middle grade adventure, and it's set between Miami and the Florida Keys. And at the time that I wrote the novel was actually talking about that whole timeline and how things launch quite a bit later than you actually write the book. So I actually wrote this book during the quarantine period of the pandemic, and we were locked away down in the Keys with all my family. But my kids were doing virtual school at the time, like every other child, every other student in America. So they were a little frustrated. They were locked inside more than usual. Sports weren't really a thing, although we were doing, basketball and stuff in our own backyard and making it work, as I have 3 kids. So it's my own little basketball team. But so for me, I really felt like I wanted to take kids on an outdoor adventure, which is what Treasure Tracks is. It's an underwater, and well, it's basically a dive for a sunken treasure in the Florida Keys. So I was living the experience. I knew I wanted something just really rich with adventure, and I was living the experience. So it was my backyard, and we'd go out on the boat, and oh my God, this reef, and I have to include this. I remember driving by a crocodile crossing sign. So just everything around me was really just filtering in the inspiration of writing this novel because I was living the adventure.
So then did that make your writing process easier, I assume, but what
It's
was
it.
that process like, your writing?
Yeah, it was easier because I was on site, I was in the venue, I was in the setting of the story, and it was I have to say, of all the books that I've written, this one flowed the quickest. I mean, it was just it came to life. It really did. And I think because I was channeling my own anxiety from the pandemic. So my kids were in virtual school, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna focus and get this done. And so yeah, I think because I was using it as an outlet to
Mhm.
channel my anxiety, and I had that goal to give something really rich and fun for children to kind of grasp onto. It came quickly. It was a simpler process than most books, I think.
So going forward with writing other books, is there a different approach that you want to take when it comes to creating the books?
I really just kind of go where the inspiration takes me, to be honest with you. I will say that I think if I have a brand, it's really something kind of ocean based. I grew up on the ocean in Puerto Rico, and I did a lot of sailing when I was young. So I think there's always going to be kind of that common thread through all my novels, that just that richness of the ocean. So that will always be something that truly inspires me and that I hope to share with other readers. And certainly themes of ocean conservancy and being stewards of the sea. And I'm always going to try to throw those little themes in there.
And when you have like a writing block or anything of that sort, I guess how do you keep your imagination going and I guess your inspiration alive?
Sure. So for me, I like to start the day with a walk. And since I live in Miami, I'm fortunate to have my neighborhood park butts up to the bay, to the ocean. So it's wonderful. I start my morning walk and I do a little meditation by the ocean, if you will. And that really kind of gets my creative juices flowing and the blood's pumping to my head and I have ideas flowing. So I always I'm probably like that lady, that crazy lady that's always jotting down notes in her on her phone at the park because I just that's really where I get a lot of my inspiration just by the ocean. Really, it just calms me, it soothes me, it clears my brain, and
So your dream is to create fantastical tales that integrate Latino voices and Caribbean history and themes. Do you ever feel the pressure to create these types of stories to accurately represent your community?
absolutely. Like I mentioned, my background, my corporate background was in Hispanic and diversity marketing, and of course, I'm Latina. My first language is Spanish. I grew up in Puerto Rico, so for me, I feel it's almost my duty, but I really feel it's so critically important because Latino voices and a lot of diversity voices are very underrepresented. I mean, we are a huge part of 26% of the US population, Latinos, and we are just so disproportionately represented. So I feel it is, if I can contribute to that in a positive and uplifting way, which I feel is what Treasure Tracks is. It's a very positive story with Latino characters and their sense of community and culture integrated within. And but the good thing is that again, it's such a positive representation. It's a middle to upper middle class boy, and he's just really chasing an adventure. He could be any other American kid, but he happens to be Latino. But again, it's a very positive story.
And you are also an active member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, Las Musas, Diverse Dreamers, and a passionate supporter of We Need Diverse Books. So, how did you find these different organizations to be a part of and support, and how has that journey been like to be a part of these communities?
One of the things in writing, because it can get a little lonely because it's you behind your laptop or computer, right? So I think
Mhm.
one of the most important thing is to really find your community. So these are from SCBWI, for example, I have a local critique group and we do Zoom chats and we critique each other's works, which is so important because you get so stuck on your own words that it really helps to have kind of that outside perspective. This is working, it's not, just like you get beta readers along the process. But Las Musas has been great. It's a group of established Latina writers as well. So we have chats, we can share notes, tips. So and everything in life, you really have to find your people. You have to find your community to support you and lift each other up along the way.
Do you have any tips for anyone wanting to become a writer?
Oh my goodness, don't give up. It's brutal. I mean, it's really hard just penetrating this world, especially if you want to be traditionally published, but just don't give up. If it's your dream, fight for it, continue to improve. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a long process, and really just continue to work at your craft. You're going to start out at one level and you're going to look back at your initial works and you're going to keep evolving as a writer, and you just really have to work on your craft and be patient with yourself.
And what do you hope people feel when they pick up your book? And what does it mean to be a Latina storyteller to you?
Well, to be a Latina storyteller is amazing. I feel like I'm giving back to my community and hopefully inspiring other young readers. And what do I hope people feel? I hope that, well, the story is about finding treasures. So for me, the really the true story is about finding your treasure, like what is
Mhm.
worth more than gold to you. So that's kind of the character arc of the story, if you will. And it's really, everybody has a treasure, right? So
Mhm.
you have to discover your own treasure.
So before we end, we have some rapid fire questions. The
Okay,
first
shoot.
question is, what is your favorite color?
Well, that one is easy. It's turquoise, the color of the ocean.
When are you the happiest?
Oh, again, very easy. I am happiest by the ocean or floating on the ocean, inside the ocean, under the ocean, anything, anywhere next to the ocean.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
I think I would tell my 18-year-old self to, I think when you're younger, as you mature, you become a little more self-confident. And when you're younger, you're really kind of letting in a lot of noise, like what are people thinking of me? So it's really just about, and it's something I tell my kids, I'm like, you do you, really. Just focus on what makes you happy and follow your path and just shut out the noise. There's so much noise around you, and really just shut out the negativity and just focus on accomplishing your dreams. And that's really where I think that's the best advice I could give myself. Don't be so insecure and what are people thinking, and you know how it goes.
Yes. If you could have three people, dead or alive, for dinner guests, who would they be?
You know, there's so many fascinating historical figures, but I've lost my mom, I've lost my abuelita and abuelito, so I would definitely have them. I would just any chance to be able to sit with them again, and just especially my mom, to be able to tell her, "Mommy, I did it. You know, I wrote the
Mhm.
book," and that would be amazing. So it's about my familia, really.
Mhm. What do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy. Wow, we're going deep. I think again it would go back to just really lifting up Latino voices and helping and hopefully giving young readers a positive message that they can see themselves in my books with a very positive, inspirational message. So if I can do that, I will be eternally happy.
What is a book that you're currently reading or recently read that you would recommend?
You know, I actually recently read Cuba in My Pocket, and I think you had the author on your podcast not too long ago, Adrianna Cuevas. And for me, it was a really important book because my husband is Cuban American, so my kids are half Cuban American, and so we're a very Caribbean Latino household. But it was just a really important book. It was very well told, especially for that middle grade reader, because it's a sensitive subject, and it touches on the Cuban Revolution. So I feel like I lived that story in my household because I've heard it so many times with my Cuban in-laws. And it's just a really beautiful book to inspire Latinos and Cubans that have maybe gone through this in their families. So it was a beautiful read.
Well, thank you so much, Sallie. We learned a lot about you. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to sit down with us and talk. Can you let everyone at home know about any upcoming projects and where they could connect with you?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you both for having me. It's been a lot of fun. So you can connect with me on through my website. It's sarodriguezbooks.com. And on there you will see my social media handles. There's an email form if you ever want to reach out to me. And in terms of future projects, I do have some books that I've been working on. Nothing I can announce just yet, but I think treasure and ocean, like I said, will always be themes in my books. So hopefully something that I can announce soon.
Oh, yay, how exciting. Well, thank you again so much. We
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed having
Thank
you, and
you
thank you
guys.
so
I
much.
appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks
Yeah.
everyone.
Did you enjoy today's episode? I'm sure you did. Don't forget to follow us on our socials on Facebook and Instagram at MyGlendaleLAC.
And follow us on Spotify and Apple or anywhere where you get your podcast from at Teen Talks. Also, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Glendale Library Arts and Culture, where we post the full episode videos every Friday at 4:30 p.m.